Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 14 of Leverage Redemption. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Sadly, at the beginning, we have farmers Leon and James getting beat up by a racist group. And it turns out this racist group might be connected to a guy named Whitcomb, who's basically trying to revolutionize the world, trying to, save the world by, creating, his big unveil right now is going to be, a plane, an electric plane, because obviously it's, if they could cut back on, his thing, because he uses a train that's, quote-unquote, that uses, renewable stuff to keep it going, so it would even put electrical cars to shame. So it's he's making this new battery for planes and he's going to unveil it, because initially it just seems like it's a hate group coming after Leon and James, but it turns out it's actually a lot more than that, because it turns out Leon and James are actually getting poisoned, because Harry immediately thinks because he dealt with a similar thing before, that there might be a cobalt situation, that it's right, Whitcomb, who's on this moving train because he has a very special train car on it, and then there just happens to be in the general area near the farm is this spot there was stuff being dumped. So question then becomes is Whitcomb aware, or is he not aware of what's going on? And I love that Parker shows up at the last second, because she had dropped James and Leon to a spa place, and as she parachutes in, it's just Parker being wild and crazy, but she notices the painting is actually safe. She doesn't care about the painting. The painting itself is real, it's ugly, whatever, but it's the framing of it. It's oh my gosh, she's I can't wait to steal from it. She's get on a train, it's still so. She's oh my god, this is amazing. She's all excited about it. I also love that we get introduced to the moment Harry was yeah, we won that case, the one he's referencing where stuff was being illegally dumped and stuff like that, so no money had to be paid out. And then Brianna's oh, we added that to the redemption. He's no, and you look at it, it's wait, what? You do see at least the top thing is crossed out, so it's wait, I actually have a look. He's well, at the very least, he's if I do leave, if I do find another job or whatever, at least I can leave here feeling a little better, for making up all the stuff I've done, essentially. Which I love that Sophie's oh, all the wrong stuff I've done, I've did right, or something. I don't know whether she was essentially saying because I ended up stealing from bad people, so it was it's okay, or whether she's saying from years of working with the Leverage team, she's made everything that she's ever done wrong right by working with the team. I don't know if that's what she was referencing either, but Elliot and Harry go to the farm, which I love. That's wait, you have all this stuff in the back. He's yeah, you got plastic and duct tape. He's Harry, we didn't ask you this before you joined the team, but you a serial killer? And I love that. He's yeah, you forgot the shovels and stuff like that, because when you think about the plastic and stuff like duct tape, you're especially because it's coming back next month. And definitely, that will always be the pop cultural reference I will always think of when you see plastic. I'm my first thought will always be Dexter, so I just think that's interesting. But it's kind of yeah, he's just kind of prepared. He ends up talking about it later on, that he kind of got interested in this type of stuff when he found out you never know what's kind of actually being dumped into your what stuff is actually inside of your drinks and stuff like that. So now he's gotten super into it. It's oh, you're not a serial killer, you're a doomsday prepper. He's I'm more like an everyday prepper. And it works out, because it turns out it's actually heavy metal in the ground, and they ultimately dig it up and find out there are batteries there. Essentially, batteries, especially car batteries, have to be disposed of carefully. Well, in this particular case, they're stuffing the batteries full of other stuff to make it more powerful, but it causes problems and it's making it leak, and that's what's happening. The cobalt, whatever, it's leaking into the water and into the farm, and that's how Leon and James are getting sick. All the while on the train, I love that just as they're getting on the train, you have Parker stealing someone's ticket, and you have Brianna be what if that's gonna be a grandmother visiting her grandchildren or something that could be Grandma Cheryl. And it's I'm sorry, it's well, Parker can't help herself. I wonder, did she actually even need the ticket? Which I guess maybe she did, but it's yeah, we could have stolen off someone younger. You didn't have to steal off of Grandma. It's just Parker sees something worth stealing, she's just gonna steal it just because she's got them sticky fingers. So I just thought that was fascinating. But I also love that Sophie was all right, I got this bag, and I've got 30 different basically characters I can become. I'm that's so it makes you that never comes up does she always have like characters on standby, or did it just happen to be an instant because she's like, I don't know what we're necessarily going to need, we got to get a little more intel, and then I'll decide on like who I need to be for the job? Because I do like the transition, you know, like she goes from one car to the next, and just as like she goes by like a part of the train, like she's already changed into her. I'm like, I love like scene transitions like that. That was pretty nice. But I'm trying to think. I'm like, does she normally carry that much stuff with her? I don't know. I also love that they're immediately like, oh, it's a bachelorette party. Oh, let's avoid that. I'm like, have they had like bad instances of those? Because at least over the course of the original series, they never did. But I guess it's like bachelorette parties are so wild and crazy and unpredictable that as a thief and con artist, it's kind of your kryptonite to be in such a highly volatile and unpredictable thing. So maybe that's why it's like avoid him like the plague, because you're going to get dragged into it and it's going to get buck wild type of situation. So maybe that's all that comes down to. But nevertheless, it does turn out Whitcomb is neck deep in all of this, because the main dude behind attacking James, the main like leader of the group towards it, he's Whitcomb's bodyguard. So it's like, yep, he's neck deep in it. So there's no like, oh, pretending he doesn't know what's what. Oh, he definitely knows. So you have Sophie pretending to be like this German heiress, getting close to him and trying to figure things out. And I love that the entire time she's in a room with him, it's probably a combination of like, hey, you know, I'm married. Well, you know, she's a widow. There's that. Plus, it's just like finding out like he's all about like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's not about money, it's about power, and certain people deserve to be on top. And you're like, ooh, and he's all about like going from like one of the places he wants to go to, it's like a place that was important to Hitler, and you're like, ooh, we see what he's on about. And it's like, oh, he's talking about turning the country, like everything back to what it was. He's like, oh, before Europe or even Americas, there was Germany, and you're like, are we down this road? And it's like, oh, he's all about it. So I think that's what makes her uncomfortable. It's like, yeah, she's supposed to be playing the job, but it's still kind of like the yucky, like just. I mean, I think it's a combination of two. Like, oh, you're a widower. Because she's had to seduce people but never get complicated situations like that since, like, I think things with Nate. I don't think that ever, you know, but so it could be a combination of two, just uncomfortableness of like, I'm a married woman, you know, widow, but still like, but also like maybe it's just like who he is and everything he represents, kind of like, oh, that's a big no-no. So that was fascinating. I do like that Parker was able to sneak in, and I love that like she cartwheels over to. It's like there's no lasers to dodge. You're doing that for no reason, but I guess it's like it's Parker, so of course she's going to be like buck wild like that too. I don't know why I keep using the term buck wild, but she opens up the safe and there's literally nothing in it, but you can tell the train's a little off, and it turns out he's got batteries stored on the train as well in the wall, and it's like, yeah, like his whole like green friendly thing is just a complete another facade, because the reason why they couldn't find the patent for the battery and stuff like that, because at first it's like, oh, maybe it's in the safe, because they couldn't find it on any of the other patent stuff, but it turns out it's because the battery doesn't exist. This is all a confidence game. He's trying to get the money, making people believe he has the battery necessarily to make this plane fly, when in actuality he hasn't even made the battery yet. He's just like, oh, I just need more time and money, and then I'll be able to kind of actually make the battery. So he's trying to buy himself more time by making it seem like he's got it all in the bag, because even his head engineer, Emily, kind of kept being like, yeah, at one point she's like, yeah, out of nowhere a few months back he had a stroke of genius, and all of a sudden the battery stuff is like hush hush, because she's the head engineer on the plane, which I immediately love. Brianna's like, yeah, she's cute, and especially it's like, okay, you're gonna have to like, Brianna's like, wait, no, but yeah, I've never run like, you know, I've never kind of run a con on someone cute before. I was like, oh, and in the moment like Emily's in the room, like she just sees Emily in the slow mo, like pulling her hair out of the bun, shaking, and I'm like, and Brianna getting like super like, whoa, the spark is there, and she's just like, oh yeah, she's kind of nerding out with her a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, drones, and you know, and everything like technology based, and it's like they're definitely hitting it off, and I'm like, oh, that's super cute. What I also love is the whole Mountie situation. That's awesome. Where it's like, oh, it's not a bachelorette party, they're Mounties, and everyone was like, no, oh my god, and then Harry's like, why are you guys tripping out? It's just about a bunch of Mounties. It's like, and Elliot's like, Mounties, the Royal Mounted Forces of Canada, like, they are the most dangerous police force out there in the world. I'm like, what? I love this. Got to show mad love for Canada, I guess. It's like, that's so bad. Because legitimately, and I think it's supposed to flip, because it's supposed to flip the stereotype on its head. because of what Canada is, because it's like considered like one of the nicest countries. Like it has that stereotype of like, oh, everyone from Canada is super nice. I even love they admit it. It's like, oh yeah, like they're super polite when they put you down. But I love that. Like I love that. It's like Harry's like, you guys take down crime organizations, actually like whole government, and you're scared of Dudley Do Right, and everyone's like, shh. We cut. Everyone goes shh, 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 and Parker's like, shut up, and Elliot's like, shut your mouth. You know, it's like, I love that so much. I'm like, and then each one of them talks about why they're kind of like, yeah, because each and every one of them is wanted by Canada. I was like, well, they haven't done anything, at least in the original show, but it turns out they've all done respective things on their own to kind of get themselves in trouble. And it's like, yeah, the Mounties, they never forget a face. So that's why they got to avoid them. And I love that. Like, Parker's like, oh, I stole the Stanley Cup. And then later on, Sophie's like, what? No, I stole the Stanley Cup. And it's like, when's the last time you saw it? And Sophie's like, I forgot where I left it. And he's like, well, aren't you glad I found it? Parker. And she's like, I'm like, yes. But also, it's like, once again, I love a little callback. That came up, it came up in an episode, but there was a reference to, was that last episode the one with Hurley? That episode referenced like him being a hockey player. That episode is also when it came up about the Stanley Cup being stolen, and I remember Nate being like, I think it was Nate in particular, like, no, the Stanley Cup, I've seen it. It's like, oh, sure you have. It's like, yeah, it's a fake or whatever. So it's like, it's interesting to know that Parker steals from, like, it makes you wonder when she stole it. Was it like recently? Was it sometime during the original series when she found out that Sophie had it? Like, did she steal it then or something? I'm so curious. I find it so fascinating, but I thought that was pretty dope. So it's like, right, we've got to expose Whitcomb before we end up getting to Detroit, but also while avoiding that side of the train where the Mounties are celebrating. So I thought that was kind of amazing. There's also a little moment between Elliot and Harry where it's just a conversation about, it's like, yeah, did you ever think that I would last? And Elliot's like, at first I didn't. He's like, but most people, when it comes to what they've done, they can either just kind of be ashamed of it, but you in your case, like, you were ashamed of it, but you faced it head on, and not many people can say that. So he says, depending on what you want to do, there will always be a spot on this team for you in the long term, because you've faced what you've done, and you've done good in the long run. So yeah, it's always a spot here for you if you want to. So I thought that was pretty dope. But once it's kind of clear that Emily doesn't know anything about Whitcomb's like deception and just what the evil like he's trying to commit, so it's up to Brianna like to show her. And I love that like Emily's super nervous, like, yeah, like never been in a room alone with someone like me who likes like tech stuff or whatever. And I was like, oh, she's super nervous still. And like, that's super adorable. I don't think it is ironic, like the axe that she ended up using. It was like, yeah, because like the whole thing of like, oh, it brings out like racism or something like that. Like, ironically, that Brianna would be the one to use that to break open the wall and expose the batteries and expose Whitcomb to her. And so ultimately it turns into a situation of, obviously Emily's scared because like if she exposes Whitcomb, it would mean putting an end to her electric dreams. Yeah, she had nothing to do about this, but this project, it could mean something in the future. Granted, they're not there yet, but it could mean something until Whitcomb comes in. But obviously Sophie leads everyone inside, and so it's a thing of, don't worry, like, show us the battery and stuff like that. So everything Whitcomb had prepared, telling them like, oh, like Sophie's character doesn't know anything, but it's like, she's like, but they were like, no, but you just told her that she was the foremost in knowledge about this type of stuff. So it's like, now you're telling me she's not. So he gets exposed, he runs, and the Mounties are waiting for him because Harry called them before he came back to help Elliot deal with like that group. And obviously for Elliot, when he met like that group of like that hate group, it's like, oh, like, because they're trying to burn down Leon's farm as well as, kill everyone there just to cover this all up. But like, for Elliot, it disgusts him. It's like, did any of you actually serve anyone other than yourself? And it's like, no. And with Harry's help, he runs one over the car. Obviously, Elliot does a thing. And I don't know why it's always the badass thing that Elliot does. He's like, hey, look at me. Look at me. Look at me. Bam, knocks you out. And Harry hit the other dude with the shovel. But I love Elliot hits him with the bat. It's like, my buddy hit you. My friend hit you with the shovel. It's only polite to stay down. And Harry's like, oh, I hit that dude with the shovel. I hit that dude with the car. Yeah. He's like, oh, that's just the adrenaline. It's like, it's good. He's like, yeah, I think I'm going to hurl. It's like, no. And it's like, just cover it with dirt. Ugh. So that kind of worked out. But I also appreciate it as he's putting on a stereotypical Canadian accent just before he hit one of the guys with the car, just so he can warn the Mounties about Whitcomb, and they arrest him and they're like, oh, Whitcomb, we never forget a face, and I love that. So that all works out in the end. I was about to say poor guy, but obviously he's a racist douchebag. That the dude that Parker ended up kicking off the train. I do like that the entire time she was wearing the conductor's outfit. I don't know why I like that. God, Parker's so crazy. I even love at the end, once again, little callbacks where because I think they referenced it earlier in this season as well, where like Parker was at the dinner table because she was like, oh, we didn't like, because she was upset that they didn't really get to rob the train. I forgot what Sophie was kind of explaining later on, but they were able to technically steal it, but like Brianna has it, and Brianna was like, I'll give it to you. But it's like Parker was like slamming like the fork and knife on the table, and then Elliot's like, fork. I was like, it's been years. Parker will never live that fork thing down. It will always be there. That it's like Parker and forks, that's a big no-no. But I do like that Brianna and Emily, they're cute together. I'm like, ah. And I love James and Leon, and it's like, oh, like Leon's like, oh, that's so adorable, and James is like, well, if we're up here making fun of other, like teasing other people, we must be feeling better. But luckily they were able to. Whitcomb has to pay to have not only like the lawyer fees and stuff like that, but he also has to pay to clean up the mess he made with the batteries. But also the people, like, they weren't able to stop the hate group, but at least cut their funding off, and now a lot of them are going quiet because they don't have his backing anymore. So luckily there's that. They were also able to sell, the train, and all the money from that is going to go back to Leon's farm, because that came up early in the episode. It's been in his family for a long time, and despite everything, it's like everything my dad went through, he persevered. Everything my grandfather went through, he persevered. And luckily, it seems like Leon and James will be able to do the same. So, just kind of a nice ending at the end, just everyone kind of talking and gathered, and it's like, yeah, I really like this. It was just kind of like a very I mean, this show, as I've not seen the video, but there's a video on YouTube that just talks about Leverage being like such a comfort show, and it's like, it is, it's just like, you can always walk away from most episodes, and the reason why I say most is because obviously you have your episodes that are like the big overarching episodes, but most, like, I'd say 95% of episodes, you walk away with a good feeling like, the bad guys, quote unquote bad guys, win, So I mean, in the end, the bad guys do their thing to make sure that the good guys win in the end. So I don't know. This show is just like that. It's just a comfort show. It's just, and you kind of forget, just like, once again, like, even like rewatching the show, I was like, man, I forgot how. I think I might have brought this up during like the season one, the first half of the season episodes, but it's like, rewatching the entire season, I'm like, I forgot how damn awesome this show is. Like, this is just as, it feels with that same energy that the original show does too. It's like, this, damn it, this is so good. It's so good. It's so funny. It's so awesome. This is just too damn good. I'm like, because I never knew, like, I would want more Leverage, and I'm so damn glad we got more. Like, holy crap. I need to shut up. I'm getting too hyped, but yeah, 2 more episodes for the season, so I'm definitely interested to see where the next episode takes us with all of this. Sorry when I went a little tangent, but really that's all I want to talk about. Till next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.